Dad, we flew to Europe. Just to get away from you. In the middle of New Year's Eve, I read my daughter's words and felt my world shatter. How do you forgive someone you raised, yet they abandon you when you need them most? Welcome back to your ultimate destination for gripping revenge stories, family betrayals, shocking betrayals, and emotional justice. Subscribe now and join a community and tell us where you're watching from. Turn on the notification bell for our next story. Are you ready to witness the ultimate payback? Let's get started. The kitchen smelled of roasted chicken and fresh herbs, steam curling up from the pot on the stove. Thomas had been humming a quiet tune, trying to mask the tight knot in his chest. It was New Year's Eve, and he had spent the afternoon preparing a feast for the family he loved, imagining the laughter and clinking glasses that would mark the start of a new year. His phone buzzed on the counter. A message. He wiped his hands on a towel and picked it up. It was from his daughter, Lily. Dad, we flew to Europe. Just to get away from you. Thomas froze. The knife he had been using to chop vegetables slipped slightly, and he caught it just in time. He stared at the words again. To get away from me? Margaret, he whispered to his wife, who was stirring sauce at the stove, read this. Margaret leaned over, her eyes scanning the screen. She let out a small, shocked sigh. Oh, Thomas, she really left? Thomas sank into a chair, the words repeating in his mind. While he had been buying groceries, decorating the dining room, and carefully planning a thoughtful New Year's celebration, Lily had quietly packed her bags and boarded a plane without a word, just to avoid him. He could feel the sting of betrayal like a sharp punch to the chest. All these years, I worked for them, planned for them, every holiday, every birthday, every little thing, and she just leaves. Margaret touched his shoulder gently. Maybe she just needed space, Thomas. You know how she gets when things feel tense. Thomas shook his head, anger mingling with sorrow. Space? Space is one thing. But New Year's? The one night when we all come together? She knew I'd be waiting. And his voice cracked slightly. She made a choice. Against me. Against us. He thought of the laughter he had imagined filling the dining room, the clinking of glasses, the warmth of family. All of it vanished like smoke. He could almost see Lily's suitcase rolling down the conveyor belt at the airport, a silent declaration. I'm leaving, and you can't stop me. Another message appeared, a follow-up. We're sorry, Dad. We just needed to breathe. Happy New Year from Europe. Thomas read the words over and over. The casual tone, the way she signed off as if it were nothing more than a postcard, it was unbearable. He clenched his fists on the table. How do they not see, he muttered. All I've done, and this is how they repay me? Margaret sat quietly, letting him speak, knowing that trying to reason with the initial wave of betrayal would do no good. She whispered softly, maybe we should call them, Thomas. Hear them out. Thomas shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping him. Hear them out? And what? Listen to her explain why she couldn't even stay for dinner? Why she felt the need to escape from her own father. I prepared everything, Margaret. I waited. And she just flew away. He pushed back from the table, pacing the kitchen. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in with disappointment and heartbreak. Every decoration, every plate set for the New Year celebration, now seemed to mock him. Do you think she even thought about how this would make me feel? He whispered to no one in particular. Or did she just not care? Margaret put a hand on his arm. She probably cares, Thomas. In her own way. But right now, you're allowed to feel hurt. This isn't about anger. It's about acknowledging that what you expected didn't happen. Thomas sank into the chair again, staring at the message on his phone, the reality pressing in. The wound was fresh, sharp, and personal. He had imagined a joyful evening, laughter, hugs, a warm celebration. Instead, he faced silence and the cold, digital words of a daughter who had chosen distance over family. If someone you loved avoided you on purpose, would you confront them or let the silence speak? Thomas sat at the kitchen table long after the last steam had risen from the pot. The New Year's decorations, once cheerful, now felt like a cruel reminder of an evening that would never happen. He stared at his phone, rereading Lily's message for the 10th time. Dad, we flew to Europe. Just to get away from you. He slammed the phone down, the sound echoing off the walls. How could she do this? He whispered, voice trembling. I spent all afternoon preparing, waiting, and she didn't even tell me. Margaret approached cautiously, carrying 2 mugs of tea. Thomas, you need to breathe. Maybe she's overwhelmed. Maybe it wasn't about you, really. Thomas shook his head violently. Not about me. Margaret, she said it herself. To get away from me. She made it personal. She wanted to escape me. His hands clenched into fists, white-knuckled. All those years I tried to give her guidance, love, and this is what I get? This rejection. Margaret set the mugs down and placed a hand on his arm. I know it hurts. But shouting, blaming, it won't bring her back. Bring her back. Thomas's voice cracked. I didn't need her back. I needed her to respect me, to acknowledge family. She treated me like a stranger. She turned our home, our tradition, into nothing. He rose from the chair, pacing like a caged man. The kitchen felt smaller, the walls closing in. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears, rapid and uneven, each thump a reminder of how betrayed he felt. Margaret's voice was soft but firm. You're feeling hurt because you love her. And when that love is ignored, when it's dismissed, it feels like a knife. But you have to think before acting on that pain. Thomas stopped, staring at the wall, his mind replaying every missed glance, every sigh, every time he had tried to reach her over the past months. Was it his fault? Had he failed as a father? Or was this simply Lily making choices he couldn't control? He sank into a chair again, burying his face in his hands. I don't know what I did wrong, he muttered. I prepared everything. The dinner, the decorations. I even baked her favorite cake. And she just left. Without a word. Like I don't matter at all. Margaret knelt beside him, voice quiet, steady. Thomas, you do matter. And she knows it. But she made a choice to run from her feelings, from responsibility. Right now, it's about processing that. Not punishing her yet. He lifted his head, eyes red and glassy. Processing it how? Every time I think about her laughing, boarding that plane, I can't stop the anger. The betrayal it's overwhelming. Margaret squeezed his hand. That's natural. Let yourself feel it. But remember, anger can be dangerous if you let it take over. You have a choice. Let it consume you, or use it to understand, to respond, not react. Thomas closed his eyes, breathing slowly. He wanted to scream, to call her, to demand she explain herself. Yet beneath the rage, he felt something heavier, sorrow, the hollow ache of absence, the bitter taste of rejection. He glanced at the clock. Midnight would pass soon. Fireworks would fill the sky, families would toast, and his daughter would be thousands of miles away, unreachable. The full impact of her betrayal was finally sinking in, sharper than he could have imagined. When the ones you love leave without warning, do you confront them immediately, or wait and let the heartbreak settle? The house was eerily silent after the last tick of the clock. Outside, fireworks painted the sky in brilliant streaks of red and gold, but inside, Thomas felt nothing but the weight of absence. Lily's laughter, her excited chatter about the new year, had been replaced by a void that seemed to echo with every heartbeat. He sat in the living room, hunched over, the half-eaten cake on the table mocking him. The frosting was smeared, the candles melted. Every detail of the night he had imagined, warmth, smiles, family, had vanished, replaced by betrayal. She flew to Europe, just to get away from me. The words reverberated in his mind like a relentless drumbeat. Thomas's gaze fell on the travel brochures she had left scattered on the counter weeks ago. Europe, Paris, Rome, Barcelona. He could picture her, suitcase in hand, smiling at someone else, while he had waited, preparing, hoping. His chest tightened, a mix of rage and heartbreak colliding into a knot he couldn't untangle. Why, Lily, he muttered, voice raw. Why couldn't you just tell me? Margaret entered quietly, her expression soft. Thomas, don't let this consume you. He looked at her, a bitter laugh escaping. Consume me? Margaret, I feel like I've been hollowed out. Every plan I made, every thought about celebrating together gone. She doesn't even see what she's done. She placed a hand on his shoulder. You're in pain. That's normal. But don't let anger dictate your next move. Step back, think carefully. Thomas shook his head. Step back? I can't. I keep imagining her, laughing with friends in some European cafe while I sit here alone. How can I step back when every memory, every preparation, mocks me? He stood abruptly, pacing the room. He thought about calling her, confronting her, demanding answers. But a small, gnawing voice inside warned him. Confrontation and anger could destroy whatever fragile connection remained. And yet, the urge to act, to make her feel the weight of her absence, was overwhelming. Thomas sank onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. His mind replayed snippets of conversation, times he had been firm with her, moments of disagreement that now seemed trivial in light of her flight. Was it something I said? Something I did? The questions circled endlessly, each one a sharpened arrow of guilt and frustration. Margaret sat beside him in silence. "You're grieving the relationship as much as the night," she said softly. "Your anger is the shield, but don't let it become a weapon against yourself or her." He exhaled slowly, rocking slightly. "I can't stop thinking about it. The betrayal, it's like a storm inside me, growing. Every plan I made for us, every careful thought, she erased it all. I feel broken." His phone buzzed again. Another message from Lily, brief and casual. "Hope the new year is going well. Sorry we missed dinner." Thomas's hands trembled as he read it. Casual, detached, unapologetic. The words burned. He wanted to scream, throw the phone, confront her on the spot. But something in Margaret's calm gaze restrained him. Instead, he sat in silence, allowing the storm inside him to build, coiling like a dark serpent ready to strike. He realized that his desire for answers, for reconciliation, and for justice, or maybe revenge, was growing stronger. Every moment alone, every quiet tick of the clock, fed the intensity of his thoughts. Thomas stared at the window, watching the distant fireworks fade. Somewhere across the ocean, Lily celebrated, unaware of the chaos she had left behind. And somewhere in his mind, a plan began to form, careful, deliberate, and fueled by the raw sting of betrayal. CTA. When betrayal cuts deepest, do you retreat in silence, or let the fire inside guide your next move? Thomas spent the next few days in quiet calculation. The house was clean, orderly, yet every corner reminded him of what had been lost. He didn't call Lily again. He didn't send messages. Instead, he observed, planned, and waited. He started small. A message to the travel agency she had booked with. "Could you confirm the dates and destinations for my daughter, Lily, and friends traveling with her?" The reply was polite but brief. Her European itinerary, meticulously outlined. Thomas printed it, studied it, memorized it. He wanted to know where she was, what she was doing, without alerting her that he was paying attention. Then he moved on to other subtle tactics. He rearranged her favorite books, leaving notes in their pages that only she would notice. A message hidden in a photo she had sent last year. Little reminders of home, carefully placed, small enough to not alarm her, but enough to make her feel the invisible presence of what she had left behind. Margaret watched him quietly. "Thomas, are you sure this isn't going too far?" He looked at her, calm but with a glint of something harder in his eyes. "No, it's not about punishment, Margaret. It's about making her see. She thinks she can escape consequences, but every action has weight. Every choice leaves a trace. She'll feel it." He picked up Lily's old calendar, flipping through the months. He knew her routines, her favorite spots in the city, the cafes she frequented. Every detail became a tool, a way to intersect with her life without intrusion. He wasn't spying maliciously. He was asserting presence, reminding her subtly that while she was far away, she hadn't erased the impact of her absence. Then came the small coincidences, carefully orchestrated. A mutual friend mentioned Thomas had sent a message asking for a recipe Lily had requested. A package he had mailed arrived at her temporary address, filled with small reminders of home. A postcard, a scarf, a note, "Thinking of you. Happy New Year." He didn't want to punish her. He wanted recognition. He wanted acknowledgement. The hunt wasn't about anger. It was about presence, about letting her know that her choices had meaning. Late at night, Thomas would sit with the itinerary, imagining her walking along European streets, pausing at a cafe, perhaps glancing at a note he had sent. He allowed himself a grim satisfaction. Each subtle intrusion, each careful reminder, was a message. "I am here. I am waiting. You cannot escape the truth of what you left behind." Yet even as he executed these moves, he felt the tension inside him rise. He realized that the line between subtle guidance and control was thin. Every note, every message, carried risk. She could resent him further, or worse, she could completely shut him out. Margaret spoke once more, her voice quiet but piercing. "Thomas, remember why you're doing this. It's not about victory. It's about making her understand. Don't let the hunt make you lose yourself. He nodded, acknowledging her warning, but the fire inside him refused to dim. He was meticulous, calculating, patient. The hunt had begun, not with confrontation, but with quiet presence, subtle messages, and the relentless pulse of emotional truth. For the first time since reading her message, he felt control return. The betrayal had sparked something in him, a resolve not just to be ignored, but to make his daughter confront the weight of her choices. When someone you love avoids you, do you confront them directly, or set subtle reminders that their actions have consequences? Thomas had been carefully following Lily's subtle trail for days. Notes, packages, messages through friends. But tonight, as he scrolled through a thread of her social media posts, something caught his eye. A photograph. Lily standing on a European balcony, arms crossed, staring out at the city. But it wasn't the picture itself. It was the caption. Needed to breathe, needed to escape the pressure at home. It's not just Dad. It's everything I feel I can't say. Thomas leaned back, a strange mix of relief and new tension washing over him. It wasn't purely rebellion or malice. Lily hadn't flown away just to hurt him. She was overwhelmed, trapped in a storm of expectations and emotions she couldn't articulate. He sank into the sofa, running his hands through his hair. So it's not just about me, he murmured to Margaret, who had quietly entered the room. It's the pressure, the expectations, everything she's holding in. Margaret nodded, understanding. That doesn't erase the betrayal, Thomas. But it explains a lot. Maybe she isn't running from you. Exactly. She's running from the suffocating weight of what she feels she must do. Thomas stared at the screen, a chill settling over him. The anger he had felt was still there, sharp and raw, but it shifted, intertwining with guilt, sorrow, and a surprising sense of empathy. He had assumed she left simply to reject him, to mock him, to act in defiance. But the truth was more complex, layered with fear, confusion, and isolation. He reread the caption again. Needed to breathe, needed to escape the pressure. He remembered every moment he had unknowingly contributed to that pressure. The expectations, the constant reminders, the subtle critiques he thought were guidance. Had he piled too much on her shoulders without realizing it? Margaret touched his arm. Thomas, now you know. The betrayal isn't just black and white. There's depth, reasons you might not have considered. This changes things. Thomas exhaled slowly, eyes fixed on the balcony photo. It does change things. I've been so focused on my own hurt that I didn't stop to see hers. I was planning subtle lessons, reminders, and she was already struggling under the weight of everything I thought was helping her. He felt the sting of guilt piercing the edges of his anger. The hunt he had begun, the careful messages and small interventions, they suddenly seemed heavy, almost intrusive. He had been acting on assumption, planning consequences for a betrayal that wasn't as simple as he thought. Yet even as he wrestled with this revelation, he felt a flicker of determination, not to punish, but to understand, to reconnect, to bridge the gap that had grown between them. He realized that he could still guide her, still let her feel the presence of home and family, but with compassion and awareness rather than subtle retribution. Margaret leaned closer. Thomas, it's time to think about how to approach her. Not with anger, but with clarity. You've seen the layers now. She needs understanding, not just reminders of what she left behind. Thomas nodded slowly, a deep ache in his chest as he processed the complexity of the situation. His anger had evolved into a careful, considered determination, not revenge, but a desire to reach her, to heal the rift, to ensure she understood the weight of her choices while also acknowledging her struggles. He finally whispered aloud, almost to himself, I was ready to confront her with subtle punishments, but now I see. I need to meet truth with truth, anger with patience, and love with understanding. When betrayal is deeper than it seems, do you punish, or do you seek to understand the reasons behind the actions? The next morning, Thomas found himself at the small cafe where he often met old friends, hoping the fresh air and familiar faces might clear the fog of his thoughts. He didn't know what he was looking for, guidance, solace, or just someone to remind him he wasn't alone. But the universe seemed to answer in the form of Mr. Harrington, an elderly neighbor who had raised 3 children of his own. Thomas, Harrington greeted warmly. You look like the weight of the world's on your shoulders. What's happened? Thomas hesitated, then sighed. It's Lily, she left. Flew to Europe without telling me. Just to get away from me. I feel betrayed, angry, lost. I don't know what to do. Harrington nodded knowingly. The hardest part of parenting isn't teaching them, but letting them grow. Sometimes they need distance to find their own footing. That doesn't make it any less painful for you. Thomas rubbed his face. Distance? She disappeared while I was preparing New Year's dinner. I planned everything, and she just went. How am I supposed to feel calm about that? Pain, anger, confusion, all of it's natural, Harrington said gently. But if you let those feelings consume you, you risk losing her. Not permanently, perhaps, but emotionally. You need an ally in this, Thomas, someone who reminds you to approach this with patience and perspective. Thomas looked into Harrington's eyes, seeing the years of experience, the quiet wisdom. For the first time since reading Lily's message, he felt a spark of clarity. The hunt, the subtle reminders, the quiet presence he had tried to maintain, all of it had been fueled by anger and hurt. But maybe, just maybe, it was time for a different approach. I don't want her to resent me, Thomas admitted. I don't want my anger to push her further away. But I don't know how to bridge this gap without losing my dignity or scaring her off. Harrington chuckled softly. Dignity isn't about hiding your hurt, Thomas. It's about showing her that you care enough to respect her space while still being present. Let her know she matters, without demanding, without punishing. Let empathy lead, and the bridge will form naturally. Thomas nodded slowly, absorbing the advice. He realized he had been alone in this storm, letting anger dictate his plans. But now he understood, he didn't have to face this alone. Harrington's words, simple yet profound, provided both a moral anchor and a strategy. He could balance patience and presence, understanding and firmness, without letting the betrayal consume him. Back at home, Thomas shared his conversation with Margaret. Harrington said something important, he explained. He reminded me that this isn't about punishing Lily, but about showing her that I care, even if she needs distance. That patience can be a presence in itself. Margaret smiled faintly. That sounds wise, Thomas. Maybe it's the step you needed to see things more clearly. Sometimes an ally isn't someone who acts for you. It's someone who reminds you how to act right. Thomas felt a small weight lift from his chest. The plan he had carefully constructed, full of subtle interventions and quiet reminders, wasn't wrong, but it needed balance. He didn't have to let anger dictate his every move. With Harrington's guidance and Margaret's quiet support, he could navigate this delicate reconciliation without losing himself. That evening, he picked up his phone again, but this time with a calm resolve. He would reach out, not with subtle punishments, but with presence, understanding, and honesty. The alliance he had formed, with wisdom, perspective, and patience, was a lifeline, a moral compass guiding him toward a path that balanced love and accountability. When faced with betrayal, who could be your ally? Someone to guide you toward understanding rather than revenge. Thomas had reached a fragile calm. He had taken Harrington's advice to heart, pacing his interactions with Lily carefully, balancing patience with presence. Yet even as he prepared a thoughtful message, something gnawed at him, a voice in his mind whispering that subtlety wasn't enough, that she needed to feel the consequences of abandoning him on New Year's Eve. He sat at the table, the cursor blinking on the screen. Lily. He typed a few words, erased them, typed again. Every draft carried restraint, care, and warmth, yet his anger threatened to bleed through. Words that could wound instead of bridge. Margaret entered quietly, placing a cup of tea beside him. Thomas slowed down. Don't let the hurt twist into something you'll regret. He nodded, swallowing hard. I know, but part of me wants to shake her, make her see. All the subtle reminders, the notes, the packages, they feel like whispers when I want her to feel the storm. Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. Thomas, remember, your goal isn't to punish. It's to reach her. Don't let the betrayal inside you create a new betrayal. A betrayal. The word struck him like a lightning bolt. Could he betray his own values in the name of retribution? Could his carefully built patience crumble into manipulation, control, or emotional coercion? He leaned back, feeling the weight of it pressing into his chest. That night, in the quiet of the living room, he revisited the subtle messages he had sent, the notes tucked in books, the postcards, the small reminders of home. What had once felt like careful presence now seemed dangerously close to intrusion. He imagined Lily reading them and feeling spied upon rather than loved. A cold shiver ran down his spine. Thomas realized he had been teetering on the edge of his own moral line, risking his integrity in pursuit of what? Recognition? Apology? A feeling of control? He clenched his fists, the realization painful. The hunt had turned inward, revealing his own capacity for a quiet cruelty that mirrored the very betrayal he had experienced. Margaret knelt beside him, placing a hand over his trembling ones. See? That's why guidance and perspective matter. You felt the betrayal. Now you must choose. Become what you fear, or stay true to yourself. He exhaled, a long, shuddering breath. The room felt heavy, oppressive, as if it were closing in on him. He wanted to lash out, to demand she see the pain she had caused. But he also wanted something more: truth, connection, resolution. Hours passed. The storm inside him raged quietly, unseen, until he finally stood, pacing the living room. His mind circled endlessly. Am I too soft? Too patient? Will she ever understand? Each thought was a test, each breath a challenge to his will. By morning, Thomas had made a choice. He would reach out to Lily, not with the subtle manipulations of the past, nor with anger, but with honesty, vulnerability, and the risk of rejection. The betrayal within had revealed the temptation to replicate harm, but it had also clarified his path. The storm of anger could be transformed into a bridge, not a weapon. Margaret watched him pack a small envelope, a letter, heartfelt and careful, intended to convey his love and disappointment without coercion. This feels right, he whispered, voice thick. Not perfect, but true. When your own anger tempts you to betray your values, how do you choose, to lash out or to act with integrity? The envelope rested on the kitchen table for hours before Thomas finally picked it up. It wasn't just a letter. It was a culmination of heartbreak, patience, and truth. He could feel the weight of every word, every carefully chosen sentence, pressing against his chest. With trembling hands, he folded it and tucked it into his coat pocket. The next morning, Margaret drove him to the courier office. The distance between him and Lily felt both enormous and intimate, as if each mile carried the tension of months of silent struggle. Remember, Thomas, Margaret said quietly, this isn't a confrontation. It's a conversation. Be present, but don't push. Let her respond in her own way. He nodded, trying to swallow the lump in his throat. I want her to understand. I want her to feel what her choices cost, not to punish, but to bridge the gap. The courier assured him the letter would reach her in Europe within a day. Thomas walked back to the car, every heartbeat loud in his ears. For the first time since New Year's Eve, he realized the full magnitude of what had happened. Not just her flight, but the emotional distance that had grown between them, the words unspoken, the laughter lost. That evening, his phone buzzed. A message from Lily. Dad, I got your letter. I didn't expect this. Can we talk? Thomas's chest tightened. He stared at the screen, trembling, unsure if he should reply immediately or let the weight of her words settle. Finally, he typed, Yes, Lily. Whenever you're ready. I'll be here. They arranged a video call. The screen flickered, and there she was, Lily, slightly pale, eyes wide, hands twisting a scarf nervously. He could see the tension, the guilt, the apprehension, all the layers he had begun to understand. Dad, she began, voice trembling. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I felt trapped, and I thought, if I left, I could breathe, think, maybe escape all the pressure. Thomas took a deep breath, the lump in his throat refusing to disappear. Lily, I understand now. Not everything is as simple as anger or defiance. But you have to understand, when you left without a word, it felt like betrayal. It felt like the family I imagined didn't matter to you. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't want to hurt you. I just didn't know how to explain how I felt. And seeing the celebration planned, the food, the decorations, I felt guilty and scared, and I panicked. Thomas nodded slowly. I get it. And I realize now that my own expectations, my own attempts to guide you, may have added to that pressure. I wanted us to celebrate together, but I see now that I needed to understand you first. That's the truth. For a long moment, they sat in silence, connected through the screen but miles apart. Then Thomas said softly, "We've both made mistakes. But we have a chance now. To talk, to listen, to rebuild trust. Not as punishment, not as control, but as father and daughter." Lily's shoulders sagged, tears spilling. "I want that, Dad. I don't want this distance anymore." The conversation stretched into hours, layers of hurt unraveling, emotions pouring freely. Every word, every pause, carried honesty, vulnerability, and the tentative rebuilding of a bond nearly broken. Thomas felt the storm inside him begin to calm. The reckoning had come, not with anger, but with truth, empathy, and understanding. When the ones you love betray you, would you seek confrontation or open the door to honest conversation? Weeks passed since the video call, and slowly, a rhythm returned to Thomas's life. The house, once heavy with silence and betrayal, now carried a tentative warmth. Lily had returned, not as the defiant daughter who had fled on New Year's Eve, but as someone willing to meet him halfway, to repair what had been strained by distance and misunderstanding. Thomas watched her unpack, placing souvenirs from Europe on the kitchen counter. Each item was a story, a memory, a fragment of the experience that had seemed so distant just weeks before. He realized that what had felt like abandonment had been an awakening, both for her and for him. "Dad," Lily said softly, holding up a small painting she had bought in Paris. "I want you to have this. I know I hurt you, and I want to make it right." Thomas took it, feeling the weight of the gesture. "It's beautiful, but it's not just the painting. It's the thought behind it. That you thought of me while you were away. That counts more than words." Margaret watched them from the doorway, a quiet smile on her face. The tension that had once clouded the house had lifted, replaced by a fragile but growing connection. The reckoning had done its work. Anger and guilt had transformed into understanding and dialogue. Thomas thought back to the night of the betrayal, the raw sting of reading her message. "Dad, we flew to Europe. Just to get away from you." He remembered the isolation, the storm of anger, the subtle manipulations, and the moral temptations that had arisen during his descent into resentment. And now, standing in the kitchen with his daughter beside him, he understood the arc of the journey. Pain had forced reflection, anger had pushed him to action, and revelation had shown him the path to empathy. "Lily," he said gently, "we've both learned a lot through this. You needed space, and I needed patience. But the important thing is that we're here now. Together." Tears glistened in her eyes. "I know, Dad. I don't ever want to feel so far away from you again." Thomas nodded. "Neither do I. But I've also learned that love isn't about control or expectation. It's about understanding, listening, and showing up, even when it's hard." They embraced a long, unbroken moment of reconciliation. The house, once filled with echoes of disappointment, now hummed softly with laughter, conversation, and the quiet comfort of family reconnected. Thomas placed a hand on his chest, reflecting on how betrayal had transformed him. He realized that revenge, anger, or subtle manipulation could have led him down a darker path, but choosing understanding, patience, and honest communication had created real connection. The lesson was clear. Even the deepest wounds could lead to growth, reconciliation, and emotional strength. As night fell and the city's distant fireworks hinted at celebrations beyond their home, Thomas felt a profound sense of peace. The storm of betrayal had passed, leaving clarity, love, and a renewed bond with his daughter. He glanced at the New Year's table, still slightly disheveled, and smiled. It wasn't the celebration he had imagined, but it was better, filled with authenticity, honesty, and presence. When betrayal shakes your foundation, do you let anger rule, or do you rebuild with understanding and love? Thank you so much for watching my story all the way to the end. Your support means everything. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.